The story began in the quiet corners of Il Giardino, where secrets often lingered longer than the scent of wine. Deacon Sharp had been spending more time behind closed doors lately, not for business, not even for pleasure, but for something he had never quite believed in before: therapy. And the person sitting across from him, guiding him through his fractured mind, was none other than Dr. Taylor Hayes. What had started as professional sessions, quiet confessions about guilt and loneliness, had turned into something more dangerous, something intimate. Taylor had come to Il Giardino as part of her outreach work, hoping to help Deacon manage the shame that haunted him since Sheila's return. At first, she had approached him with clinical distance, but Deacon's honesty, his self-deprecating humor, and the cracks in his bravado drew her closer. She saw a man trying to change, but chained to a past that refused to let him. And he saw in her a calmness that no one else offered. Their sessions, held in the late evenings after closing, became a ritual. One bottle of wine turned into two, laughter replaced caution, and the invisible line between therapist and patient began to blur. It wasn't supposed to happen. But one night, after too many confessions and too much Cabernet, it did. The rain had started softly outside, the restaurant empty except for them. Taylor had been recounting a story about Ridge, about how love could turn into obsession, and Deacon had looked at her with something like understanding. "You're not the only one who's loved the wrong person," he'd said. There had been a silence then, the kind that hums with something inevitable. When their lips met, it was less passion than exhaustion, a surrender to everything they'd been denying. But the cameras caught it all. What neither of them knew was that someone had remotely accessed Il Giardino's security feed that night. And that someone was Brooke Logan. Brooke had been restless, her instincts sharper than ever. She didn't trust Deacon's recent distance, nor the way Taylor seemed to appear wherever he was. When she stumbled upon the archived footage while helping Ridge investigate a possible data breach at Forrester Creations, her heart froze. There they were, Deacon and Taylor, caught in a moment that shattered every boundary of ethics and loyalty. Brooke could have gone straight to Ridge, straight to the press, straight to anyone who would listen. But instead, she closed the laptop and sat in the dark, trembling. For the first time in years, she didn't feel righteous. She felt powerful. She knew exactly what this footage meant. With one click, she could destroy Taylor's credibility as a psychiatrist, ruin Deacon's fragile reputation, and drive Sheila into a jealous frenzy that might finish what justice couldn't. But Brooke wasn't sure yet if she wanted to be the hand that set the fire, or the one that watched it burn. Meanwhile, Sheila Carter had begun to notice changes in Deacon. The man who had once worshipped her with reckless devotion was suddenly distracted, distant, and evasive. He was quieter when she spoke, colder when she touched him. Sheila had lived her entire life reading danger in body language, and now she saw it everywhere in his. One night, as she watched him wash glasses behind the bar, she smiled a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You've been busy," she said softly. "You smell like someone else." Deacon laughed it off, but the flash of fear in his eyes told her everything she needed to know. Jealousy was Sheila's oldest companion. It wrapped itself around her now, like smoke. Within hours, she was rifling through his phone, his office, his habits. And soon, she had a name: Taylor. The discovery was like acid. Not because she loved Deacon. Sheila had long stopped believing in love, but because betrayal was an insult she never forgave. As Taylor tried to bury her guilt beneath professionalism, her sessions grew darker. She began to project her own turmoil onto Deacon, trying to treat the very emotions she was suffering from. When he tried to end their meetings, she panicked. He was the one person who made her feel seen without judgment, and now even that was slipping away. But every time she thought about confessing, fear stopped her. Not of Sheila, not even of Ridge, but of losing her reputation, the one thing she had rebuilt after years of scandal. Then came Brooke's visit. It happened quietly, like all wars do before they turn bloody. Brooke walked into Taylor's office carrying a flash drive and that infuriatingly calm smile she wore before dropping a bomb. "You might want to sit down," she said. When Taylor plugged in the drive and saw the video, her blood ran cold. She tried to speak, but words failed. Brooke didn't shout, didn't threaten. She simply leaned back and said, "I could ruin you with this." Taylor's voice cracked. "What do you want?" Brooke studied her, the silence heavy. "You've been trying to rebuild your credibility. Your patients trust you. Ridge still sees you as some moral compass. Imagine what happens when this gets out." Taylor swallowed hard, her palms sweating. "You wouldn't." "Oh, I would," Brooke interrupted softly. "Unless you help me." The deal was unholy, but both women understood the rules of survival. Brooke wanted information about Ridge, about Sheila, about Deacon's state of mind. Taylor, bound by confidentiality, hesitated. But Brooke wasn't asking. She was commanding. "You'll cooperate," she said, "or you'll lose everything." And so the alliance began, uneasy, toxic, built on necessity. Brooke provided protection from public disgrace, while Taylor fed her fragments of psychological insight she shouldn't have shared. Together, they tried to anticipate Sheila's next move. What they didn't know was that Sheila was already 2 steps ahead. When Sheila realized Taylor's involvement with Deacon wasn't just professional, her rage hardened into purpose. She began to stalk Taylor's movements, sending anonymous threats, leaving notes on her windshield. "You think you can take what's mine?" One night, Taylor came home to find her apartment door ajar. The lights flickered, and on her kitchen table lay a photo of her and Deacon, taken from the security footage Brooke thought only she possessed. Someone else had the copy now. Terrified, Taylor turned to Brooke for help. "She's going to kill me," she whispered. Brooke, shaken, finally revealed her own secret. "She's not the only one who knows. I saw the footage too." The revelation shattered what little trust they had. "You recorded me?" Taylor hissed, her fear turning to fury. Brooke tried to justify it, claiming she only wanted to protect Ridge, to expose Sheila, to prevent another tragedy. But Taylor wasn't listening. Her mind was spiraling. Under pressure, she made a desperate decision. She turned to the one thing she had left, her files. The confidential records of her most complex patients, the secrets that could destroy half of Los Angeles if revealed. Among them was Luna Nozawa's case, a young woman whose unstable mental state and violent tendencies had been buried under confidentiality agreements. Taylor knew that leaking Luna's records could redirect Sheila's wrath, distract her with another target. It was unethical. It was unforgivable. But it might save her life. When Luna's private therapy notes appeared in the tabloids days later, chaos erupted. The scandal tore through Forrester Creations and Spencer Publications alike. Luna's name trended across every platform, her trauma turned into spectacle. Ridge confronted Taylor, demanding answers, while Brooke pretended to be horrified even as she quietly tightened her control. But Sheila wasn't fooled. She saw the manipulation for what it was, and she was done playing quietly. In the final act of this spiraling game, all 3 women, Sheila, Brooke, and Taylor, found themselves face-to-face at Il Giardino once more. The restaurant was closed, rain hammering against the windows just as it had that first night. Deacon stood behind the bar, caught between them, realizing too late that every choice he had made had led here. Sheila, with a gun in her hand, smiled that serpent smile. "You thought you could outplay me," she said. Brooke, trembling but defiant, stepped forward. "You don't scare me anymore." Taylor, her voice breaking, whispered, "Please. We don't have to do this." But they already were. The lights flickered. A scream echoed. And when the police arrived, there was shattered glass, spilled wine, and 3 lives forever changed. Brooke survived, but barely. Sheila vanished into the storm. And Taylor, shaken and exposed, turned herself in the next morning, confessing everything, from her affair with Deacon to the breach of patient confidentiality that destroyed Luna's life. Deacon visited her once, weeks later, in a psychiatric facility where she had admitted herself. She looked at him through the glass, her eyes hollow but calm. "We tried to fix what's broken," she said softly. "But maybe people like us aren't meant to heal. We just pass the damage on." And somewhere in Los Angeles, Brooke stared at her reflection, wondering if she'd really won, or if she was just the last woman left standing in a war that none of them would ever truly escape. Because in the bold and the beautiful, redemption is always temporary, and love, when mixed with power, is just another word for destruction. The weeks after the shooting at Il Giardino bled into months, but the shock still lingered like smoke after a fire that refused to die. The city had moved on, at least on the surface. Headlines faded, gossip was replaced by new scandals, and the world But those who had been there that night, Brooke, Deacon, and Taylor, couldn't forget even if they wanted to. The memory lived under their skin, humming like an electric current that would never go quiet. Deacon was the first to return to the restaurant. Il Giardino had reopened under new management, but he couldn't stay away. The smell of garlic and wine used to comfort him. Now it made him sick. He stood behind the bar late one night, tracing his fingers over the bullet hole still visible in the back wall. They tried to patch it, but the outline was still there, faint but permanent, a reminder that no matter how much you rebuild, there's always something that refuses to be erased. The police had cleared him of any wrongdoing, but absolution didn't feel like forgiveness. Sheila was gone, vanished into the night after the gun went off. Some said she was dead. Others swore they'd seen her near the docks or in Vegas, or even hiding under a new name somewhere in Europe. Deacon didn't know which was worse, that she might be alive or that she might be haunting him. Brooke, meanwhile, had survived with only a graze along her shoulder. Physically, she healed fast. Emotionally, she hadn't healed at all. The bullet had missed her heart, but the truth had not. In the aftermath, her alliance with Taylor had been exposed in brutal detail. The press tore her apart for blackmailing a therapist and leaking confidential information. Forrester Creations went into damage control, and Ridge, ever the conflicted savior, stood by her publicly while privately drowning in disappointment. Brooke told herself she'd done what she had to do, that she'd tried to protect Ridge and their family, but deep down she knew it had never really been about protection. It had been about control. It always was. Taylor's self-surrender had shocked everyone, but it also earned her a strange kind of sympathy. She had checked herself into a psychiatric facility rather than face trial, admitting that she'd broken her ethical vows and endangered lives. The media called it a breakdown, but Taylor preferred to think of it as clarity. For years she had built her identity around healing others, yet she had been the one bleeding the entire time. Her sessions with the hospital psychiatrist were relentless. She spoke about guilt, about manipulation, about the night she fell into Deacon's arms not out of desire, but out of exhaustion. "I wanted to save him," she said once, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I was really trying to save myself." The day Deacon came to visit her, she almost didn't go to the visitor's room. But curiosity, and perhaps longing, won. He looked different, thinner, quieter, as if the chaos had drained something essential from him. They didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was rough. "They said Sheila's dead." Taylor's eyes flickered. "Do you believe that?" He shook his head.
"No."
"Not for a second." She smiled sadly. "Then neither do I." The world outside continued its slow spin, but inside the quiet corners of their lives, the past refused to stay buried. One night, Brooke received a package, no return address, just a single envelope. Inside was a flash drive. Her fingers trembled as she plugged it into her laptop. The screen came to life with a familiar image, Il Giardino's security footage, the same footage that had once captured Taylor and Deacon's illicit night. But this time, the date stamp was new, just 2 weeks old. The camera was still active. Someone had been in that restaurant. And in the reflection of one of the mirrors, for barely a second, Brooke saw her.
Sheila.
The face was older, thinner, but unmistakable. The impossible had happened. She was alive. Brooke's stomach turned to ice. The footage ended abruptly, replaced by a single line of text that appeared in white against black. "You thought you won." The message was as much a taunt as a promise. Brooke didn't call the police, not yet. Instead, she called Ridge. When he answered, his voice was weary, as though he already knew trouble was coming. "It's her," Brooke whispered. "Sheila's alive." There was silence on the line before Ridge said, "Then it's not over." At the same time, Taylor was released quietly from the hospital under supervision. Her license was gone, her reputation destroyed, but she looked freer than she had in years. She had nothing left to lose, and sometimes that was the most dangerous kind of freedom. Deacon picked her up outside the facility. "You didn't have to come," she said, avoiding his eyes. "I wanted to," he replied. "We both survived something that should have killed us." They drove for hours, aimlessly, until they ended up back at Il Giardino. It was closed, the windows dark, the neon sign half-lit. The moment they stepped inside, something felt wrong. The air was colder than it should have been. The scent of roses and cleaning fluid clashed like oil and water. And on the bar counter sat a single object, a wine glass filled halfway with red liquid. Beside it, a folded napkin. Taylor hesitated, then opened it. In smeared ink it read, "Miss me?" Deacon's pulse quickened. He looked around, scanning the shadows. "She's playing with us," he muttered. Taylor's voice trembled. "Or warning us." The next morning, the tabloids exploded with photos. Someone had leaked images of Deacon and Taylor returning to Il Giardino together, looking pale and shaken. The captions were merciless. "Lovers reunite at scene of their sin." Brooke saw the headlines over breakfast and felt her throat tighten. She had the flash drive in her desk drawer, but she hadn't told anyone. Not Ridge, not the police, not even Hope. Because part of her didn't want to stop Sheila yet, not until she understood what game the woman was playing. Days later, Ridge confronted her. "You're hiding something," he said, his voice low, his eyes sharp. Brooke tried to deflect, but he pressed harder. "If Sheila's alive, we need to act now. Don't keep this from me, not again." Brooke's composure cracked. "You think I'm the only one keeping secrets?" she snapped. "You still talk to Taylor. You still visit her." Ridge froze. The words were true. He had been visiting Taylor in secret, trying to understand her guilt, her motives. But now, with Brooke's fury and Sheila's ghost between them, everything began to crumble again. Meanwhile, Sheila made her return not with blood, but with precision. She began sending letters, to Deacon, to Brooke, even to Ridge, each one revealing a new piece of the night at Il Giardino that no one had known. "You think you saw what happened," one letter read, "but you didn't see who pulled the trigger." It was enough to unravel the fragile piece that had been holding everyone together. Deacon became paranoid, haunted by the idea that he might have been the one responsible. His dreams turned violent, Sheila standing over him, laughing, the sound of gunfire echoing. He started drinking again, sneaking shots after hours. Taylor tried to help him, but she was unraveling too. Every night she saw Sheila's face in her mind, whispering things only she could hear. Guilt and fear fused until she no longer knew what was real. Brooke, desperate to regain control, made a choice that would haunt her forever. She arranged a secret meeting with Sheila. It happened in a dim hotel room near the edge of town. Sheila walked in, alive and unrepentant, her smile sharp as a knife. "I knew you'd come," she said. Brooke kept her voice steady. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted," Sheila replied. "To be seen. To matter. To make them pay." Brooke clenched her fists. "If you go after Taylor or Deacon again, I'll end you." Sheila laughed. "Oh, Brooke. You already have. You just don't know it yet." She handed Brooke a small envelope and walked out. Inside was a photo, grainy but unmistakable. It showed Brooke, the night of the shooting, standing behind Deacon as the gun went off. The implication was chilling. Had she fired the shot? Had she buried that memory under adrenaline and fear? The realization hit her like a tidal wave. When the truth finally surfaced weeks later, it came not through confession but through evidence. A police investigation confirmed it. The bullet's trajectory matched Brooke's position that night. She had meant to kill Sheila. She had been trying to protect Taylor. But in the chaos, she had pulled the trigger. Sheila hadn't died, but the guilt had eaten Brooke alive ever since. In a twisted way, Sheila had won. She had turned all of them, Brooke, Deacon, Taylor, and Ridge into versions of herself, broken, secretive, and desperate to survive. The final scene unfolded back at Il Giardino once more. Deacon locked the doors, pouring a single glass of wine for Taylor and one for himself. "We could leave," he said. "Start over."